Here is my Ferrari 296, and this is the hybrid battery out of it. And we think the reason why this car don't start is something to do with this.
Something is happening with Mat Armstrong right now that the car community cannot stop talking about. It started quietly, it built slowly, and now it has reached a point where people who have supported him for years are genuinely unsure which side to stand on. We are going to walk you through the whole thing from the beginning, because the full picture is far more complicated than the headlines suggest. The car that broke the internet is back. Mat Armstrong is not a guy who gives up. When everyone else looks at a smashed-up supercar and sees a write-off, Mat looks at it and sees a project. That mindset has built him one of the biggest car channels in the world. So when Mat Armstrong himself starts talking about a car in a way that sounds like defeat, you pay attention. In the closing weeks of 2025 and into early 2026,
what would happen if you turned the traction control off on an 820 horsepower Ferrari 296?
With reference to the wings, they're on their way, but there are other parts that Ferrari have blocked.
Mat uploaded a series of videos about a Ferrari 296 GTB that had been completely destroyed in a crash in Cyprus. The car had been hit so badly that a Ferrari dealership in Cyprus looked at it and said it had never been repaired before, not even by Ferrari themselves. The suspension was gone. The floor had a hole in it. The wiring was destroyed. The airbags had gone off. The interior was shredded. It was, by every reasonable measure, a dead car. Mat bought it for £100,000. That alone got people talking. But what happened next is what made this story explode across every corner of the car community. And honestly, it goes way beyond cars. Because what Mat ran into while trying to fix this Ferrari is the exact same wall that millions of ordinary people are about to hit with their own vehicles over the next decade. He just hit it first, in the most expensive and public way possible. And here is where things stand right now. The Ferrari 296 is still in his workshop. It is completely transformed. It looks unlike anything Ferrari has ever officially released, and it still has not moved under its own power. Not once. Mat sent Ferrari an email asking them to help him complete the build. As of this video, he is still waiting for a reply. That is not how Mat Armstrong stories usually end, which is exactly why we need to talk about it. Let us go back to the beginning of this specific project, because the setup is as wild as anything that came after it. £100,000 and a car nobody could fix. The Ferrari 296 GTB that Mat purchased had been owned by someone in Cyprus who made a very expensive mistake. The car produces a combined 830 horsepower from its hybrid V6 setup. The owner turned off every single driver aid and put that power down on an open road. The result was catastrophic. The car tore itself apart. When it was taken to the nearest Ferrari dealership, the mechanics there were honest about something that very few people in the automotive world would admit openly. They had never seen a 296 repaired from this level of damage. Ferrari themselves had no precedent for it. That is the car Mat decided to buy. He flew to Cyprus with roughly £9,000 worth of original Ferrari parts already packed and ready. Ferrari, to be fair to them at this early stage, actually allowed him to work in their dealership yard. He was surrounded by brand new Ferraris worth more than most houses, using their tools, with their mechanics watching every move. The plan was straightforward enough. Get the car on 4 wheels, get it started, ship it back to the United Kingdom, and finish the build at home. But the Ferrari 296 GTB is not just a car. It is, at its core, a computer on wheels. And when Mat turned the key for the first time, the dashboard delivered a message that stopped everything cold. Hybrid system failure. Go to the dealer. 4 words. That is all it said. 4 words that would end up costing Mat more money than most people earn in several years. He did not walk away. He diagnosed. He rerouted. He reconnected. He threw every trick he knew at the problem, and nothing worked. So he did what he always does when a technical problem cannot be solved with skill alone. He spent money. He bought a brand new hybrid battery for the car. The cost was $23,800. not pounds, dollars. The car still would not start. New warnings appeared. Battery, thermal, runaway. Multiple temperature sensor faults. The hazard lights stopped flashing. The ignition came on, but the car still refused to fully run. And after hours of digging deeper into the system, Matt found what he believed was the real issue. The car had a pyrotechnic fuse, which is a safety device that physically destroys itself during a crash to cut off the high-voltage system instantly. That fuse had done its job perfectly. But the battery management module, the part of the car's brain that decides whether high-voltage power is allowed to flow anywhere at all, was refusing to communicate with anything. It was 2:52 in the morning when Matt told his viewers he had been working through the fuses for hours and still could not find the answer. That detail matters more than it might seem, because that is who Mat Armstrong actually is underneath the highlight reels. He is the guy still working at 3 in the morning on a car that cost him 6 figures and will not even acknowledge that he exists. Here is the thing about this Ferrari situation that separates it from every other manufacturer dispute Matt has been through. Ferrari said yes and then no, and that is so much worse. When Ferrari finally gave him their official position on what would need to happen before they could properly help him, it was framed as a condition rather than a refusal. And the condition was this: before Ferrari would properly diagnose the car, everything had to be present and connected exactly as it was at the time of purchase. All airbags, all sensors, all lights, all radiators. Every hybrid module was reconnected and intact. In other words, they needed him to finish rebuilding the entire car first, and then they would tell him what was wrong with it. Heard that again, because it is genuinely stunning. Finish rebuilding the car. Then we will help you figure out why it will not work. He got his hands on an official Ferrari 296 Challenge body kit. The Challenge is the track-only race version of the 296. It uses ultra-lightweight panels, an aggressive rear diffuser, and a massive rear wing. It is what you see on the Ferrari racing circuit, not on public roads. Matt's plan changed completely. Instead of simply repairing a wrecked road car, he decided to build something that had never existed anywhere on Earth before. A Ferrari 296 Challenge Stradale. A road-going car dressed as a full factory race machine built from a crashed shell in a workshop in Leicester. The team relocated radiators. They fabricated custom mounts. They reworked the pipework. And when it was all fitted together, the car standing in that workshop was visually indistinguishable from the cars competing in Ferrari's own racing championships. There was nothing else like it anywhere on the planet. And then Ferrari blocked the remaining parts. The company's system was checking whether the vehicle was an official 296 Challenge race car registered to a team in their championship program. A crashed road GTB being converted into a race specification car in a British workshop did not qualify. Some of the components had already arrived before Ferrari's system flagged the order, so the car ended up in a strange halfway state. Not a standard road car anymore, not able to become a full Challenge spec machine either. Partially transformed, visually spectacular, and mechanically stranded right in the middle. Matt sent Ferrari a direct email asking them to reconsider. He is still waiting. Now, here is the part of this story that nobody in mainstream car media has fully connected yet, and it reframes everything. The secret Ferrari was building the whole time. While Mat Armstrong was sitting in his Leicester workshop, waiting for a reply from Ferrari, spy photographers operating near Maranello were capturing footage of something extraordinary. A heavily camouflaged prototype was being tested on public roads outside Ferrari's factory. And according to every journalist and analyst who studied the images, it looked almost identical to a road-going version of the 296 Challenge. The car community gave it a name immediately: the Ferrari 296 Challenge Stradale. If confirmed, this car would follow one of the most celebrated traditions in Ferrari's history. The brand has done this before: the 360 Challenge Stradale, the 430 Scuderia, the 458 Speciale. Each of those cars was a road-legal version of Ferrari's race program. and each of them is now worth multiples of what they originally cost. They are museum pieces. They are legends. The 296 Challenge Stradale, if it becomes real, will join that list. So let that sink in for a moment. Ferrari was almost certainly developing a road-going 296 Challenge the entire time that Matt was trying to build his version independently. They knew this car was coming. The engineering team in Maranello had already been working on it. The spy shots appeared while Matt's emails were going unanswered, and they still blocked him. Now, to be fair, Matt himself has been careful not to paint Ferrari as a villain. Their position is not without logic. The 296 Challenge parts are allocated to official teams competing in sanctioned championships. Each component is tracked and logged. Ferrari has legal and safety responsibilities around those parts, particularly the high-voltage hybrid components that, if handled incorrectly, can be genuinely dangerous. They are not blocking Matt purely out of spite. They are enforcing a system that was built for entirely different circumstances. But the outcome is the same regardless of the reasoning behind it. A man who legally owns a Ferrari, who has spent enormous amounts of his own money, who has dedicated years of expertise to this build, cannot drive his own car. Not because the car cannot be fixed mechanically, but because the software key that would allow it to run is locked behind a wall that only Ferrari controls. And here is the uncomfortable question sitting underneath all of that. If a manufacturer can permanently prevent a car from functioning simply by withholding a software authorization, do you actually own your car? Or do you just own a very expensive piece of metal that requires the manufacturer's ongoing permission to exist? That question is not a hypothetical. For Mat Armstrong, it is a reality he is living right now. If you think the Ferrari story sounds familiar, that is because Matt has been here before, and the previous version of this situation was somehow even more public. This is not the first time, and Bugatti made it uglier. In the final months of 2025, Matt began documenting the restoration of a heavily damaged Bugatti Chiron Pur Sport.
2 months ago, we went to go and look at 2 potential hypercar projects, and the other one was a Bugatti Chiron Pur Sport out in Miami. I'm now going to get to rebuild a Bugatti, learn about it.
There are only around 60 of these cars in the world. The car belonged to an American owner who had purchased it at auction after it was declared a total loss by insurance. The owner came to Matt because almost nobody else would touch it. Bugatti had already assessed the car. Their initial quote for a factory repair was $1.7 million. They later offered to do it for $600,000. The owner said no. And that is where things got complicated. Once Bugatti knew the owner was going to pursue an independent rebuild outside their authorized network, they refused to sell official parts. They went further than that. They blacklisted the car's VIN number entirely, which meant that no official Bugatti dealer anywhere in the world would touch it. Matt pushed forward anyway. He documented the entire process. He was transparent about the obstacles. And then, Bugatti's CEO, Mat Armstrong, decided to get involved personally. Mat Armstrong is not a typical CEO. He is the man who built Rimac Automobili from a garage in Croatia into one of the most advanced electric hypercar companies on Earth. He understands independent builders. He started as one, and yet he went on social media and publicly challenged specific claims Matt had made about the situation, turning what had been a technical dispute into a very public argument in front of millions of people. The car community split down the middle. Some sided with Matt, some sided with Rimac. The debate was enormous. But here is the critical difference between the Bugatti situation and what is happening with the Ferrari right now. And this difference matters enormously. With Bugatti, the wall was at the entrance. They said no from the beginning. Matt knew exactly what he was walking into. He made the choice with full information and took the risk deliberately. You can debate whether Bugatti was right or wrong, but at least the position was clear from day one. With Ferrari, the wall appeared in the middle of the building after Matt had already paid for the bricks. That distinction changes everything about the ethics of the situation. Bugatti was harsh but honest. Ferrari engaged, encouraged, and then blocked at the point where walking away meant losing everything already spent. That is a fundamentally different kind of obstacle to face. And it is the reason the Ferrari story has landed so much harder emotionally on everyone watching. Daniel Preston, a mobile mechanic who specializes in exotic cars, summed up the wider problem in an interview with automotive media. He said that physically working on Ferraris does not pose much of a challenge. The real difficulty comes from everything around the car, getting parts, getting technical information, and the fact that dealers are usually reluctant to supply independent garages and push owners back toward official servicing. He pointed out that even with right-to-repair laws in place in the United Kingdom, access is not always guaranteed in practice. Let us step back from Matt's specific situation for a moment, because there is a bigger story here that affects every single person who owns a modern car. The right-to-repair crisis. Nobody is talking about loudly enough. Right-to-repair legislation exists in the United Kingdom and across Europe. The basic idea is that a consumer who legally owns a product should have the right to repair that product, or have it repaired by a third party of their choosing, without being forced back to the original manufacturer. These laws were primarily pushed through because of the electronics industry, mobile phones, laptops, household appliances. The fight to ensure that a broken screen does not mean you have to spend £1,000 on a new phone rather than £60 on a replacement part. But cars were always part of this conversation too, and the problem has become dramatically more urgent as vehicles have become more dependent on software. The car you drive today is not primarily a mechanical device, it is primarily a software system. The engine, transmission, suspension, brakes, safety systems, and in the case of hybrids and electric vehicles, the entire powertrain are all governed by software, and that software is controlled by the manufacturer. Modern Ferraris are so tightly controlled electronically that even with official diagnostic equipment, certain functions are locked behind factory-level authorization that independent mechanics cannot access. Those tools alone can cost tens of thousands of pounds just to purchase, and even then, specific commands require a direct connection to Ferrari's own systems, which Ferrari can grant or deny at will. This is not a Ferrari-specific problem. It is a Mercedes problem. It is a BMW problem. It is a Tesla problem, arguably more than any other manufacturer. It is going to become a Volkswagen problem, a Toyota problem, a Ford problem, as every car brand moves toward over-the-air software updates and deeper integration between the vehicle and the manufacturer's servers. What Mat Armstrong is living through with his Ferrari 296 is not an edge case. It is a preview. He just happens to be experiencing it in the most dramatic and public way possible, on a car worth hundreds of thousands of pounds, with a camera running throughout. Jay Leno, one of the most respected car collectors in the world, spoke about the Ferrari ownership experience in previous interviews and described the relationship between Ferrari and its owners as unlike any other brand in the industry. He said that owners can find themselves effectively held hostage by the dealer network in ways that buyers of other cars simply do not encounter. What Matt is experiencing is not unique to him. It is something that Ferrari owners at every level have quietly complained about for years. It is just that most of them do not have 17 million YouTube subscribers to amplify the complaint. The question that regulators in the United Kingdom and Europe are beginning to ask more urgently is not whether a manufacturer can refuse to service a car. Nobody seriously disputes that manufacturers can choose not to work on a damaged vehicle. The question is whether a manufacturer can permanently disable a car that someone else legally owns simply by withholding a software key. Whether a piece of code that lives on a server in Maranello can decide that your Ferrari, the one you paid for, the one that sits in your garage, is not allowed to run today. But the thing is, you cannot fully understand this story without understanding where Mat Armstrong started, because his whole life has been a version of the same battle. The boy who fixed broken things. His father, Tony, was a mechanic who owned a garage in Leicester. Matt grew up in that garage, not because anyone pushed him there, but because it was where he felt most at home. He learned from a young age that when something breaks, you do not call someone. You figure it out yourself. That is not just a work ethic. It became an identity. Before any of this, before the Ferrari, before the Bugatti, Before the YouTube channel with tens of millions of subscribers, Mat Armstrong was a professional BMX rider. He competed internationally: France, Germany, Barcelona, Dubai. He put years of his life into that sport and built genuine skill in it. But BMX sponsorships in those years typically covered travel expenses and very little else. It was not a stable income. It was a passion with a financial ceiling. And then, at the BMX World Championships, during the qualification round, Mat dislocated his shoulder executing a 720 tail whip. He qualified in 16th place. He could not complete the competition. The shoulder did not properly heal. It began dislocating at random, including during his sleep. The career that had consumed his entire youth was over. He was barely 20 years old, injured, without financial stability, and starting completely from zero. He worked in his father's garage. He delivered food. He bartended. He worked in automotive retail and tuning shops. None of it was glamorous. None of it felt like a career. But every hour he spent under a car was building something he could not yet name.
So guys, Hannah had a little bit of an accident. As you can see, TT, pretty bad.
Then his girlfriend crashed her Audi TT. He bought the car back from the insurance for £600, documented the rebuild on a GoPro, and posted it online. His audience was tiny. They helped him source parts through the comments section. Nobody involved called it a business plan. It barely looked like a hobby. But something about watching a broken thing become whole again on camera connected with people in a way that was impossible to explain and impossible to ignore. The views grew, the cars got bigger, the budgets got larger, and the broken things got progressively more broken. When the pandemic lockdown arrived, Mat was furloughed from his job with no idea when or whether he would be called back. He had saved enough money to put a deposit on a house. He used it instead to buy a crashed car for YouTube. That decision, made under enormous uncertainty with no safety net and no guarantee of success, is either the bravest thing he ever did or the most reckless thing. Very possibly both. The camera has never fully shown the weight of that kind of risk. When the video ends and the views come in, the audience experiences the journey. They feel the tension. They enjoy the resolution. And then they close the tab and go back to their lives. Mat does not have that option. The car that will not start is still in his workshop when the camera turns off. The money spent on a hybrid battery that did not solve the problem is still spent. The email to Ferrari is still sitting there, unanswered. There is a detail from the Ferrari build that has stayed with many people who followed the story closely. At one point, Mat told his viewers it was 2:52 in the morning, and he had been working through the fuses for hours without finding anything. 2:52 in the morning, alone, working on a car that cost him 6 figures, that will not acknowledge his existence, in a workshop in Leicester. That is not a YouTube character. That is a real person under real pressure. And the fact that he keeps going, keeps trying, keeps sending emails and waiting for replies is not a content strategy. It is just who he is. It is the same person who refused to let a dislocated shoulder be the end of everything, even though it ended everything he had built up to that point. In 2025, Mat rebuilt a flood-damaged Aston Martin DBX and gifted it to his father Tony when it was finished.
My dad's one step closer to driving his dream car. I think the little bit of steam coming out the exhaust is the excess water that's in it from when it did go in the flood, and it should clear eventually.
That video gathered over 6 million views. 6 million people watched a son pay back something that can never be fully paid back. Not with a car, not with anything, but he tried anyway, because that is how Mat Armstrong operates. You give what you have. You keep going. You figure it out. The Ferrari 296 sitting in his workshop right now is the most expensive, most technically complex, most visually extraordinary build he has ever attempted. It is also the only one he has never been able to drive away from. And the reason it cannot move is not a mechanical failure that he is unable to solve. It is a software lock held by a company in Italy that has not responded to his email. What happens next, and why it matters to all of us. Mat Armstrong has lived through two of the highest-profile manufacturer lockouts in the history of automotive YouTube. The Bugatti situation was damaging but clean. He knew the risk. He took it. He documented it. The Ferrari situation is something entirely different, because the damage compounds every day that it remains unresolved. The car is already converted. The Challenge body kit is on. The radiators have been relocated. The custom fabrication is done. The investment has been made. There is no walking away from this without enormous financial loss. The only path forward runs directly through Ferrari's email server, and simultaneously, spy photographs near Maranello suggest that Ferrari is about to announce the very car that Mat has already built. The 296 Challenge Stradale, if and when Ferrari officially releases it, will be one of the most sought-after limited production cars in the world. Collectors will pay extraordinary premiums for it. It will be allocated to preferred customers on waiting lists that most people will never get onto. Mat Armstrong will have built that car first, from a crashed shell, in Leicester, without Ferrari's permission and without their help. And the car will still be sitting in his workshop, unable to run because Ferrari holds the software key. The right to repair movement has largely been fought on the battleground of affordable consumer electronics. The political argument has always been easier to make when the product in question is a £500 phone that a person on a modest income cannot afford to replace. It is harder to make the same argument when the product costs hundreds of thousands of pounds and is, by any reasonable definition, a luxury. But that framing misses the point. The principle is identical regardless of the price of the product. If a manufacturer can permanently disable a device you legally own by withholding a software authorization, then ownership itself has changed its meaning. You do not own the thing. You own access to the thing, for as long as the manufacturer decides to grant that access. That principle, if it is not challenged and reversed, will not stay contained to Ferraris and Bugattis. It is already moving down the price range. The next generation of mainstream cars will be more software-dependent than ever. The manufacturers who have learned that software control equals customer control have absolutely no financial incentive to give that control up voluntarily. Mat Armstrong stumbled into the sharpest possible version of this argument by accident. He bought a crashed Ferrari because he is constitutionally unable to leave a broken thing alone. He spent hundreds of thousands of pounds, flew to Cyprus, worked through the nights, transformed the car into something extraordinary, and ran directly into the wall that every car owner is going to hit eventually. His father taught him that when something breaks, you figure it out yourself. That principle built his entire career. It gave him everything he has. And right now, for the first time, he is facing something that cannot be figured out with skill, or money, or late nights, or determination. The only thing standing between Mat Armstrong and the road is an email reply from Ferrari. And while he waits for that reply, the rest of us should probably start paying very close attention. Because the question of who really owns your car is no longer a philosophical one. It is sitting in a workshop in Leicester, looking incredible, and it has not moved yet. That is where this story stands right now. And honestly, it feels like we are only at the beginning of a much bigger conversation. Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Do you think Ferrari will respond? And do you think we actually own our cars anymore? Or is that just something we tell ourselves